Fox faces an existential threat from its multi-billion-dollar defamation case. That is the headline from CNN Business this morning after that explosive legal filing that came into public view this week. These are some of the biggest revelations if you missed it. The billionaire owner Rupert Murdoch conceded that 4 of the main hosts on the airwaves, including Sean Hannity and Lou Dobbs, formerly, endorsed lies about the 2020 election. Yes, he said in his deposition, quote, they endorsed. He also said he wished that Fox would have been, quote, stronger in denouncing those lies in hindsight. He told a reporter that half of what Trump was saying was, quote, BS and damaging. He also admitted that Hannity was, quote, privately disgusted by Trump, but scared to lose viewers. Fox's legal team says those quotes that are coming out don't tell the full story. They've called the lawsuit dubious, but they've also cited the First Amendment as a defense there. Joining us now to talk about this is renowned First Amendment attorney Floyd Abrams and the former communications director of the Trump White House, Alyssa Farah Griffin. Thank you both for being here this morning. Floyd, I want to start with you because you, who have argued before the Supreme Court many times, you believe this is actually a landmark case.
I think it's an extremely threatening case to Fox, and I think it's a very important case. There hasn't been one, I would say, involving the media, not just broadcast, which so threatened the legitimacy of an enormous player in terms of informing the American public.
Do you think on that point that it could have the potential to move the malice bar? What Times v. Sullivan set out? Is that what you're saying or not really?
No, I think on that front, it's just ironic that it's the conservatives
the other way around
who want to move the bar. I don't think it'll be, I'm hopeful at least it's not going to be moved, but Fox is quite understandably clutching it, a raft in a sea, because it's very important to their defense.
So let's get to that. I would get to you in just one moment, Alyssa Farah, because I want to say about the audience here. But you're making the point that we talked about earlier in our conversation where I said this has more than just an impact of what happens with Fox News, what will the viewers think. That's all very important. But this is First Amendment, freedom of the press. You have a news organization allegedly in collusion with political players here, lying to their audiences, potentially, or at least in many people's eyes, in the court's eyes, or at least in Dominion's eyes, starting an insurrection. There's so much at stake here. And as you said, this is one of the biggest cases involving the media than I can remember in recent history. This is not just small potatoes.
No, it's it's big time. Look, Fox is big time. The amount of viewers it has, the impact it has on the public. And here's a case, I can't help but think that any new lawyer, and I'll bet any of the old lawyers, said to someone at Fox, maybe this would be a good case to put behind you. Maybe there's some way to settle this consistent with rationality. If they're asking for blank, of course you won't do it, but...
Why isn't that happening?
I don't think we know. If I had to guess, I'll bet there have been talks, but I don't know that. It's just inconceivable to me that as savvy, whatever else one says about the Fox people, as savvy as they are, that it hasn't occurred to them that they would really be in much better shape if they could just say, we paid the money, we didn't do anything wrong, but, it's over.
Yeah. Alyssa, you worked in the Trump White House. You know the influence and the communication that there often was between Trump himself, Trump officials, and a lot of these hosts. What do you think about the political fallout of how damaging what we're learning is?
Well, despite having direct insight into how, linked at times the Trump White House was with Fox News, I was even very shocked to read about Rupert Murdoch actually sharing a Joe Biden ad with Jared Kushner, a former senior White House advisor.
Know about that.
I didn't know about that. I would be surprised if that was something that was widely known, but it spells some issues for the Republican Party. So take, for example, the fact Fox News will likely host a Republican primary debate. Who's to say that Fox, as the network, won't put their finger on the scale in favor of the candidate who gets them the best views and the best ratings? Like, this has always come down to, there's a quote from Rupert Murdoch where he's like, it's not red or blue, it's green. It's about making money. So there's a lot of potential fallout, I think, for both the Fox audience and the people who consume that information. But also, this is the scary part. Most Fox viewers aren't going to hear about this.
They're not even aware.
They're not aware. I've been texting family members who are in that space just, hey, are you aware of this? Are you aware you're being rampantly lied to?
Let's play what Howard Kurtz, who is a Fox employee, who anchors their media show every week. Here's what he said about being muzzled. Here he was.
Some of you have been asking why I'm not covering the Dominion voting machines lawsuit against Fox involving the unproven claims of election fraud in 2020, and it's absolutely a fair question. I believe I should be covering it. It's a major media story, given my role here at Fox. But the company has decided that as part of the organization being sued, I can't talk about it or write about it, at least for now.
They don't know. They're not going to hear about it.
You know what? And good for Howard Kurtz for telling the truth. But as we've seen throughout these depositions, people have been penalized, or at least they've been asked, by senior people in the executive suite to penalize people for telling the truth. I think of Jackie Heinrich, a very serious reporter at Fox, who's just trying to do her job fact-checking the election lies, and Tucker Carlson, was texting executives she should be fired. So it actually takes a bit of bravery to go on your own airwaves and say, hey, the executives are muzzling me.
Especially as he is the media reporter. He covers the media. Is that, do you think that, is that legit for him, for Fox to say, listen, there's so much at stake here, we can't have you discussing just in case, just because?
Look, anything he says will be held against them. And, I get why they don't want him to speak. Suppose he says anything honest, straight, and critical of them. That then goes in the brief of Dominion, as even Fox's own ex has said that and acknowledged that. They're in a situation now where almost any commentary and, God knows, emails or the like, which surely they must have learned by now, that they are turned over in litigation. I mean, they're suffering as much from what they said to each other in writing as anything else, because there's one embarrassment after another. There's one statement after another which is harmful to them in the litigation. And it's not, I said this and then someone else said, I don't remember it that way. Here it is. This is what they said. It's so. Well, look, it would be no, please go on.
No. I was just going to say, Donald Trump is a big part of this, by the way, because he started to create the narrative after he spread the election lies that, Newsmax is where we should be going. One America News Network is where true believers are going. So there was this sense of fear within Fox that they were going to lose market share to those outlets. The reality is that they never even picked up enough that it in a major way affected the very high viewership that Fox News had. But you can just see sort of the fear that he instilled in the big time hosts, the primetime hosts. And I just want to say, there's a lot of really good journalists at Fox. Dayside programming, I don't have really any major problems with, but primetime's where they make their money, and it has descended into conspiracy mongering. It is basically anything to get people to tune in and drive viewership and not risk losing to the fringier outlets.
Wow. It's interesting that, though, not even a straightforward news story about this is what's happening. Dominion is accusing Fox News of this. Fox News responded this way. It could be a straightforward news story without any commentary. If they don't want to do commentary, that can explain to their viewers exactly what is happening.
They don't want it to exist.
Well, it does.
My favorite Abrams. I would say don't tell Dan,
Dan,
but please tell Dan. This is Dan Abrams' dad, by the way, who is often on our program.
Floyd, Alyssa, thank you both for joining us this morning.
Sure, thanks.